Little Red Riding Hood. The first moment. In a charming village nestled between rolling green hills and a deep, mysterious forest, there lived a little girl who was beloved by everyone who knew her. She had golden curls that caught the sunlight like spun silk, bright blue eyes that sparkled with curiosity, and a smile that could warm the coldest heart. But what made her truly special was her kind and gentle nature. She was always ready to help a neighbor, comfort a crying child, or share her toys with anyone who needed them. Her grandmother, who lived in a cozy cottage on the other side of the dark forest, had given her a beautiful red cloak for her 7th birthday. The cloak was made of the finest wool, dyed the color of ripe cherries, with a hood that framed her sweet face perfectly. The little girl loved the cloak so much that she wore it everywhere, and soon everyone in the village began calling her Little Red Riding Hood. Little Red Riding Hood's grandmother was a dear old woman who had raised many children in the village and was known for her wisdom, her delicious baking, and her endless stories. She lived alone in a cottage deep in the woods, surrounded by a garden where she grew herbs and flowers. Though she was getting older and sometimes felt lonely, she was fiercely independent and loved her peaceful life among the trees. One crisp autumn morning, when the leaves were turning gold and crimson and the air smelled of wood smoke and apple cider, Little Red Riding Hood's mother called her into the kitchen. The morning sun streamed through the windows, and the smell of fresh bread filled the air. "My dear child," her mother said, tying her own apron around her waist, "I've just received word that your grandmother isn't feeling well. She has a cold and hasn't been able to get out to the market. I've prepared a basket of good things for her. Fresh bread, sweet butter, strawberry jam, and some of the honey cakes she loves so much." Little Red Riding Hood's eyes lit up with concern and eagerness to help. "Oh, may I take them to her, Mama? I haven't seen grandmother in so long, and I would love to help her feel better." Her mother smiled, but her expression grew serious. "Yes, you may go, but you must promise me something very important. You must stay on the path through the forest, don't wander off, no matter how pretty the flowers might look or how interesting the butterflies might seem. The forest can be dangerous, especially for a little girl alone." Little Red Riding Hood nodded solemnly, understanding the weight of her mother's words. "I promise, Mama. I'll go straight to grandmother's cottage and come home before dark." Her mother packed the basket carefully, covering it with a clean white cloth, and tied Little Red Riding Hood's red cloak securely around her shoulders. She kissed her daughter's forehead and watched from the doorway as the little girl skipped down the garden path, her red cloak fluttering behind her like a bright flag of courage and love. The middle journey. Little Red Riding Hood began her journey through the forest with a light heart and quick steps. The path was well-worn and familiar, winding between tall oak trees and past babbling brooks. She hummed a little song as she walked, swinging her basket and enjoying the beautiful autumn day. But she was not alone in the forest. Hidden among the shadows of the trees, a cunning wolf had been watching her from the moment she entered the woods. This wolf was unlike any ordinary forest creature. He was sly, intelligent, and always hungry for more than just food. He craved the thrill of the hunt and the satisfaction of outwitting his prey. The wolf stepped out onto the path, blocking Little Red Riding Hood's way. He had made himself look as friendly as possible, with his tongue hanging out and his tail wagging slightly. "Good morning, little girl," he said in his most pleasant voice. "What a lovely red cloak you're wearing. Where are you going on this beautiful day?" Little Red Riding Hood, who had been taught to be polite to everyone, stopped and smiled. "Good morning, Mr. Wolf. I'm going to visit my grandmother, who lives in the cottage by the old oak tree. She's not feeling well, so I'm bringing her some food to help her get better." The wolf's eyes gleamed with interest. "How thoughtful of you. And where exactly does your grandmother live?" "Just through the forest, past the mill and over the little bridge," Little Red Riding Hood replied innocently. "It's the cottage with the blue shutters and the rose garden." The wolf's mind began working quickly. "What a lovely granddaughter you are. But tell me, wouldn't your grandmother enjoy some fresh flowers with her meal? Look how beautifully the wildflowers are blooming just off the path." Little Red Riding Hood looked where the wolf was pointing and saw a meadow filled with the most beautiful flowers she had ever seen, golden daffodils, purple violets, and white daisies dancing in the breeze. They are beautiful, she said, momentarily forgetting her mother's warning. Grandmother does love flowers. Why don't you pick some for her? The wolf suggested smoothly. I'm sure she would be delighted. Take your time, I know a shortcut to her cottage, so I can make sure she knows you're coming. Before Little Red Riding Hood could think clearly, she found herself wandering into the meadow, enchanted by the flowers and excited about the joy they would bring to her grandmother. She didn't notice the wolf slipping away through the trees, heading swiftly toward the cottage. The wolf reached the grandmother's cottage long before Little Red Riding Hood, who was still picking flowers and had lost track of time. He knocked on the door with his paw, disguising his voice to sound like the little girl. Grandmother, it's me, Little Red Riding Hood. I've brought you some food from Mama. The kind old woman, who was indeed feeling unwell and was resting in bed, called out, "Oh, my dear child. The door is unlocked, please come in." The wolf burst through the door and, before the poor grandmother could react, swallowed her whole. Then, thinking himself very clever, he put on her nightgown and cap and climbed into her bed, pulling the covers up to his chin. When Little Red Riding Hood finally arrived at the cottage, her arms full of flowers, she found the door open and called out, "Grandmother, I'm here." "Come in, my dear," came the reply from the bedroom. Little Red Riding Hood entered the bedroom and approached the bed, but something seemed wrong. Her grandmother looked very different than usual. "Grandmother, what big eyes you have," she said, feeling uneasy. "All the better to see you with, my dear," replied the wolf in his disguised voice. "And grandmother, what big ears you have. All the better to hear you with, my child." Little Red Riding Hood stepped closer, her heart beginning to race with fear. "But grandmother, what big teeth you have." The wolf threw off the covers and leaped from the bed. "All the better to eat you with," he roared, and swallowed Little Red Riding Hood in one gulp. Satisfied with his meal, the wolf lay down on the bed and fell into a deep sleep, snoring so loudly that the whole cottage shook. The last moment. As fate would have it, a brave woodsman was passing by the cottage that very afternoon. He had known Little Red Riding Hood's grandmother for many years and often stopped to check on her, especially when he heard she wasn't feeling well. As he approached the cottage, he was alarmed to hear the most tremendous snoring coming from inside. "That doesn't sound like the gentle old woman I know," he said to himself, gripping his axe tightly. "Something is very wrong here." The woodsman peered through the window and saw the wolf lying on the bed, his belly round and swollen from his enormous meal. The wolf's disguise had slipped off, revealing his true identity, and the woodsman immediately understood what had happened. Moving quietly but quickly, the woodsman entered the cottage and approached the sleeping wolf. With careful, precise movements, he used his sharp knife to cut open the wolf's belly. To his amazement and relief, out tumbled Little Red Riding Hood, gasping and frightened but completely unharmed. "Oh, thank you," she cried, hugging the woodsman. "It was so dark and scary in there. But what about my grandmother?" The woodsman reached into the wolf's belly again and carefully helped out the grandmother, who was also shaken but uninjured. The three of them quickly filled the wolf's belly with heavy stones, and the woodsman sewed it back up before the wolf could wake. When the wolf finally awakened, he felt terribly thirsty and went to the well to drink. But the stones in his belly made him so heavy that he fell in and drowned, ensuring he would never hurt anyone again. Little Red Riding Hood ran to her grandmother and hugged her tightly. "Oh, grandmother, I'm so sorry. I should have listened to Mama and stayed on the path. If I hadn't stopped to pick flowers, none of this would have happened." Her grandmother, wise and loving as always, held her close. "My dear child, what matters is that we're both safe now, thanks to this kind woodsman. You've learned an important lesson about the dangers of talking to strangers and not following the rules that keep us safe." The woodsman smiled warmly. "You're a brave little girl, and your grandmother is a remarkable woman. But remember, Little Red Riding Hood, the forest can be dangerous. Always stay on the safe path, and never trust those who would lead you astray." Little Red Riding Hood nodded solemnly, the lesson burned into her heart forever. She helped her grandmother unpack the basket her mother had prepared, and they shared the bread, butter, jam, and honey cakes while the grandmother's strength returned. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, the woodsman offered to walk Little Red Riding Hood home. She bid her grandmother farewell, promising to visit again soon and to always stay on the path. The journey home was peaceful, with the woodsman telling her stories of the forest and its creatures, both the ones to befriend and the ones to avoid. When they reached her village, Little Red Riding Hood's mother rushed out to greet them, having worried when her daughter didn't return before dark. Little Red Riding Hood told her mother everything that had happened, leaving out no detail of her adventure and the terrible mistake she had made. Her mother hugged her tightly, tears of relief streaming down her face. "I'm so grateful you're safe, my darling," her mother whispered. "And I'm proud of you for telling me the truth about what happened. You've learned that the rules we give you are not meant to limit your fun, but to keep you safe." From that day forward, Little Red Riding Hood never again strayed from the path when traveling through the forest. She continued to visit her grandmother regularly, always staying alert and remembering the lessons she had learned. The red cloak remained her favorite, but now it represented not just her grandmother's love, but also her own wisdom and courage. The grandmother lived many more happy years, and she and Little Red Riding Hood grew even closer after their shared adventure. The woodsman became a dear friend to the family, often joining them for Sunday dinners and always keeping watch over the forest paths. And Little Red Riding Hood? She grew up to be a wise and careful young woman who helped other children learn about safety and the importance of listening to their parents. She never forgot the day she learned that the world could be dangerous, but also that there were always good people ready to help those in need. Whenever she told the story of her adventure, she would end with the lesson that had saved her life: always stay on the safe path, listen to those who love you, and remember that not everyone who seems friendly has good intentions. But also remember that there are heroes in the world, and help can come when you need it most. The end. And so concludes the tale of Little Red Riding Hood, a story that teaches us about the importance of following safety rules, being wary of strangers with bad intentions, and the courage of those who help others in times of need. It reminds us that while the world can be dangerous, there are always good people ready to protect and help those who are vulnerable.